Hello, welcome to our first ever podcast of Step Up to Save Our Children. I'm so excited to have you all here. My name is Denise Mayer, and I'm a wife to my husband of 53 years, a mother of 3 daughters, and a grandmother to 6, all living here in Anderson Township in Cincinnati. I became aware of the nicotine vaping in our schools and in our community around 2018. I was shocked, to say the least. I started asking questions of the school system, other parents, grandparents, and most importantly, the grandkids, and decided that more had to be done to save our children from becoming lifelong users, and in some cases, actually losing their lives. So I started a coalition, Step Up Anderson Township, to bring education and awareness to parents and caregivers to promote a safe, healthy, and drug-free community. Our coalition, made up of all sectors of the community, has done a lot. We've done a lot, but there is so much to do, even though we've been doing it for 6 years. So with the legalization of high-potency marijuana, illicit fentanyl poisonings, and underage drinking, it is difficult for parents and to get any of this information that they need because they have so many commitments and they're so busy. This podcast is an attempt to reach you where you are, whether it's having a minute at home to yourself or in the car waiting for your child from sports, music, or ballet. I hope that this will be a go-to for you on Spotify, YouTube, or on our actual website, which is www.stepupanderson.org. Fentanyl poisoning is a growing problem across the United States and here in Cincinnati. My first guest is my friend, Stephanie Quehl, who understands this far too well, having lost her amazing son, Jack. Stephanie Young Quehl was born and raised in Cincinnati. She's been married to her husband, Tom, for 28 years. She and Tom have 4 boys, Eric, Jack, Tyler, and Adam. They raised their family in Loveland, and Stephanie taught at St. Columban School for 18 years. Then she retired to start the Jack Quehl Foundation. Through the foundation, she and Tom hope to share Jack's story and educate on the dangers of illicit fentanyl and hopefully save some lives along the way. It is such a privilege to have you on our first podcast. When we first decided to try this to reach more parents and caregivers, you, Stephanie, were the very first person I thought of to tell Jack's story. You and Tom have done such an amazing job, so much work with this Do It for Jack Foundation, and I am so happy to have you on today. Hello, Stephanie.
Hi, Denise. Thank you so much for having me on your first podcast.
It's exciting.
It is. I'm very proud of you. So
Thank you.
Denise and I met, talking about this subject, right? And so I thank you again for having me as your first guest. It's actually a very big honor and privilege to talk about what we're doing.
Well, I can't imagine how difficult telling Jack's story is for you. I can't. I get emotional thinking about it. So I'm sure it doesn't get any easier. But if you can share with us Jack's story about his life, about what happened, whatever you feel comfortable sharing.
Okay. So Jack, it was my firstborn. Eric was Tom's son when I met him. He was 3 when we got married. He was 6, so he's my stepson. He is 34 years old, living in Mason. And then Jack was our first together. And then Tyler came 20 months later. And then Adam, he's 9 and 11 years difference. So he's our little caboose. He's a junior right now at Moeller High School. And Jack was just, he was a joy to have. I mean, he wasn't perfect, believe me. But, I just felt like everything was, fine. We worked, we lived in Loveland. We were raising our family. He was educated in private schools. He went on scholarship to college. He was super smart. He was a National Merit Scholar. And, but I say these things to prove the point that it doesn't matter how smart you are when it comes to making choices in life. And he loved sports. He loved everything football, mostly, I would say. Number one, for some reason, he was a Razorback fan and a Buccaneers fan. And that's like starting at 5 or 6, and we can't really figure that one out. So he was true to his teams through and through. And he went to University of South Carolina for college and enrolled in the International Business School. And so he was gone a lot. He went to Germany his sophomore year. He went to Singapore his junior year. He came home for fall semester senior year. And then he went to, or no, wait, sorry, sophomore year, junior year. Then he went to Brazil, went back on campus his senior year. And like everyone else, COVID hit and he came home. And, we were so happy to have him. And looking back now, I'm so thankful for that time because I got Jack for about a year that I would have never had with him. I feel like he would have graduated college and just been gone. He loved to travel. He loved to learn, loved to read. I mean, I can't even understand the books he has. Like I couldn't read what he read. So he just I just knew that Cincinnati would not be his stopping place, that he would either work internationally or do something. But long story short, he enrolled in a program called Venture for America. And it was like I kind of equate it to like Teachers for America. So they go and they get these students and they have a, rigorous interview process. And then they place them with startup companies. And this is going on during COVID. He's doing these interviews after the graduation he didn't have, and lived in our house meanwhile and got this job in Baltimore. So he got placed in Baltimore, but couldn't find a place to stay. And this is when the housing, you put a deposit down and be gone before you could, find a place. So he had two friends that worked there, fraternity brothers from South Carolina, and they would let him stay on their couch. And I'd be like, why would they want you on their couch for a week on end? But he would go up, work, and then, stay with his friends till he found an apartment. So it's kind of important to our story because they ended up finding him two roommates. Like it was his two college friends, sisters, boyfriend, connections, like not really good friends, but roommates. And I say that just because they're an important role to his story. So it was probably end of July of 2021, he packed up a U-Haul. And Tom and I still laugh at this too, because we weren't even like, oh, here, let us go with you. He was that independent. He, a pretty big drive-all U-Haul and drove himself to Baltimore. And we laughed too, because he got there and none of the furniture fit. He couldn't get it up the steps. And so kind of all in vain, didn't work out, and he had to get furniture. But so that was July. And then my other son, Tyler, had graduated May of 21 from South Carolina. And he also enrolled in the program. And he landed his first job in Philadelphia. So Labor Day weekend, we decided we're going to go see Tyler and help him move, and then go see where Jack was living because he had been gone like 2 months. And it's kind of, I look back at these God moments. Adam was in 8th grade, and I said, hey, we really need to bring Adam with us. I want him to see where his brothers are living. And we never, Adam's the caboose that we'd leave home with grandma and, go do our thing with the older kids. So it was kind of weird that I said that and kind of stuck to my ground, because we all got in the car. Jack drove from Baltimore to Philly to meet us. We helped Tyler move into his apartment, and then spent the night there, ate with Tyler. He had enough of us, so he stayed. And Jack, Adam, Tom, and I then went on to Baltimore. And he was so proud. He showed us, he had a great, great apartment right down by the bay. He could walk to work. It was a startup company. I guess it's not starting up anymore, called Hex Corporation out of Baltimore. And, he would work out every day, walk to work. He was with those two friends a lot and other people from college, and was really loving what he was doing. So he just was showing us around. And after we did that night, we decided to go to dinner, and he invited the two friends. And I had probably met them before, but I don't remember. And I'm so thankful for this moment too. So his friends, Chris and Aaron, met us for dinner, and we, just enjoyed each other. I think we went out for a little bit afterwards, and And honest to God, he never let me take pictures. I had this great picture of us that I truly love so much, and I'm so thankful for. And after that picture was taken, Tom and I, said, hey, we're going back to the hotel. I think he and his friends went out for the rest of the night. And that was the last time I ever saw Jack. And I was not prepared for any of this. We left the next morning, life goes on. I went back to teaching, and about, let's see, that was Labor Day. So what, 2.5 weeks later, I was working our church festival, and my phone rang, and the extension on the phone was Bala Cynwyd, Philadelphia, which is a suburb. So I thought it was Tyler. I thought something had happened to Tyler. Or it's the only reason why I answered it, because you get those spam calls all the time and ignore it. And it was Jack's friend, Aaron, who we had just met at dinner, just saying, I'm so sorry, Mrs. Quehl, I'm so sorry. And I was like, well, what are you talking about? And I, honest to God, don't really remember everything. I just remember asking, you could tell by the tone that something had happened. And I said, is he alive? Or is he breathing, or something to that effect? And Aaron said, yes. And I was like, okay. I was like, all right. So he had called 911 and the paramedics at this point. And I just said, hey, make sure you have the paramedics call me. And I was on autopilot at this point. I'm trying to keep myself together in the middle of this church festival. Adam's running around with his friends. And I tried to leave him with friends and just go and not have him burdened with what was going on. And he caught me. And so he came home, and I just said, I got a phone call. Your brother's not doing well. And Tom was at home because he had just finished COVID. So he had just literally gotten over it and was watching the Bengals game. And so I walked in and said, hey, we got to go. It was so hard to not be able to get to your child in minutes. He was what, I don't know how far that is, 8.5, 9 hours away.
Mm-hmm.
And we tried to book flights, couldn't find them, tried, friends' planes, people we knew that had planes, any connection in Cincinnati to get us there. And we, like, the more time that went by, and it probably was 30 minutes, in my head, but I was like, we got to go. So we just got in the car and started driving, and we just kept praying and sick to our stomach, didn't hear a word. And when I didn't hear anything, I knew there was no like EMT calling. I don't know what I thought. And I guess that's part of our foundation is, if I had known what I know now, I would know what to expect, or, whatever. But thank God I didn't, because I drove in blind faith that Jack was one of those kids that always landed on his feet. He would drive me crazy, and, it could be waiting to the last minute to study for a test and he would be fine, or, yada, 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 and he would land up okay. So when they said he was breathing, I thought he was going to be fine. Now his friend Chris was found next to him, and he had already passed by the time they found them. It was really hard because, and it still is hard because we are still piecing the night together because of both of them passing. So I'm not sure what happened, but they were out with friends. And to my knowledge, after they were watching the games or whatever, Jack actually made a video that I love. It's that day. He never videoed himself getting ready for game day. And it's a great video. And so I show it a lot in our talks because he didn't know he was going to die that night. You don't expect to go out and do what you do and die. So we made it to the hospital. Tyler had come over from Philly. So he got there ahead of us. And I kind of regret that too, because I know what I saw when I got there, and I can't imagine the trauma that Tyler saw. It was still during the COVID time. So his friend Aaron was pacing outside the hospital. He wasn't allowed up. And we were actually, I guess this is not, lucky is not the right word, but we were on the, up on the heart floor because their ER was so busy that night with so many fentanyl. I call it poisoning overdoses in the city. So I guess the cops were involved with many, many cases that night of a really bad batch of fentanyl laced cocaine and pills in Baltimore. So, we got to his side. He looked so good. Like, and I know that sounds silly, but like, you see your child and they look normal. And I was like, okay, he's gonna beat this, whatever this is. And the doctor just grabbed Tom and I and a chaplain, and they sat us down and said, he has a 1% chance to live. And Tom and I, being who we are, were like, all right, let's go. I think looking back, they were trying to say this is all we can do, but Tom and I didn't hear that at that point. So we, I stayed. They brought me a bed in his room, and it was a horrible night. He must have had at least 3 heart attacks in front of me. Like, just your body can't withstand the fentanyl poisoning. They tried to do, I think he to cleanse his system to try to get it out and do everything they could. They were so gracious and worked on him. And finally, I think it was probably around 6:30 in the morning, I just looked at Tom and I was like, we can't do this anymore. Like, his little body could not take everything I saw through the night, plus what I didn't see. They were probably up. I forgot to tell you guys. So he and Chris had left wherever they were, and Jack had a rooftop in this apartment. He was so proud of it. He got the little couches. They put a TV out there. And I think they went out up there to have a final and did cocaine. And I didn't even know Jack did cocaine. I didn't know that was something these young professionals did when they were out. And it was not, I want to say not a big deal. It's just part of that generation, I guess. And Jack, and I've had, negative comments of, well, your kid shouldn't have been doing that. Absolutely. Like, he wasn't a perfect kid by any means.
Mm-hmm.
I think if he had known what I know now, he would have been a little more hesitant when offered a recreational drug. And that's kind of then, part of our mission is the recreational use, because they didn't find him for probably 12 hours. I mean, it was like 3 or 4 the next day. I figured they were up there at 2:00 in the morning. I was just trying to piece it together. And Aaron was looking for Chris and Jack. He was texting them. Tom was texting about the Bengals game, and he wasn't responding. That's when his friends realized that they were missing. So they thought his roommates, that's back to when I said they're important to the story. They just thought Jack was sleeping. They were friends and roommates and acquaintances, but they weren't texting him. And, it wouldn't be a thing to be up out all night and sleep in. They just didn't know where he was. So,
and I think that's, excuse me, but I think that is one of the things that we really need to make sure this audience understands, that there's a lot of kids in college right now, I know this for a fact, that are doing cocaine recreationally. They're not necessarily, what the problem is, we all think of people that die from the fentanyl poisoning as being some kind of hardcore addicts. They're not. They're 100% not. And I think that stigma prevents people from thinking that it could happen to their child. And that's why this is so important for you to tell this.
Yeah. And with the stigma, you're absolutely right. Was it hard for a Catholic school teacher to say that her son, had done a recreational drug and then died? The community was floored, because like you said, you think you have it all together, what's going on in your life. And his friends were very forthcoming to their social scene and what that looks like in their world. And since this has happened, obviously I've started the foundation. And when talking in schools, I've had students come up to me and say, in high school, Mrs. Quehl, you were right. I went to a college visit here, and they were doing cocaine right in front of me at a bar or wherever. So it's out there, and it's, like I said, back in the day, I've been like, what are you doing? I would have, that shock factor is not there. The pills really scare me. I think, the more, the pills between, and I'm talking more probably grade school, high school, going into college, of the kids dabbling and trying things. And that's really where our message is that you cannot try anything nowadays if you really value your life. They're still doing it.
Right.
Because it's back to what you said, it's not happening to our family. And that was me. This is not going to be my life. My kid would never do that. And that's what we're out there really trying to educate parents to like get to know what we're talking about
Right.
so that you can have that open conversation.
Exactly. And I always say to young parents, never say never, because you don't know. And our children's brains are not fully developed. And in a male, the statistics say it can be almost up to 30 before their brains are fully developed, and females about mid-20s. So when you think back on that, and that's the decision making part of the brain, it is very, very difficult for these kids to not have that risk, take that risk and feel that they're immortal, that that's never going to happen to them. And, there were three girls at Ohio State several years ago that took what they thought was Adderall, never had taken anything ever before, but they had big exams. So they took it and they ended up, well, at least two of them ended up dead. The other one, I think they were able to bring back. But this is not about drug use. I know that it sounds like it is, but it really is about poisoning. And we're poisoning our children with this illicit fentanyl. We all know, it's coming from China to Mexico to the United States. But it's a big deal.
It's a really big deal. And I was floored. I haven't looked lately, but last year, Ohio, I think, was number 3 in the United States due to the 71-75 corridor. So
Mhm.
it's here, it's coming through. And what you said, when I went to start the foundation too, it's not that, you know, drug use and addiction, that's so important as well. It's just that there
Oh,
was
yeah.
already foundations out there with it. And with me, I couldn't find anything just on recreational use. Like, what can we do to help, educate parents and students on
Mhm.
the recreational and how to avoid that. And my friend from high school, I was just with her this weekend, and I said this to her. Her son had passed probably 4 years before Jack
Mm.
to fentanyl poisoning. He had been using drugs, and I didn't go home and talk to my kids because, once again, that's not in my house. That's not going on in my world. And I still hear it today when we're speaking. Like, I still have parents that their jaws drop when we talk just on
Mhm.
what is out there. So I think it's just real. If you are listening to this podcast, that's what's so important, is just getting the knowledge and understanding so that you can have the conversation with your own family.
Absolutely. And that my whole thing with Step Up is I'm not trying to tell parents, I'm trying to make them aware. They can do with the information what they want, but a lot of our thing is talk. They do
Mhm.
listen, and it's important. It could save a life. And with some of the fentanyl that is now in Cincinnati and they're finding it in the high potency marijuana. They're
Mhm.
finding it, of course, in the pill presses that are happening. And then in the cocaine, I know up at Miami, there were some kids up there that I have personal knowledge of that were doing cocaine, but they were putting the fentanyl strips into the cocaine to check to see if there was any in there. I guess that's very smart, but I guess the smartest thing would be not to do it. But
Well,
they are kids.
and that's what I'll get from, probably after talking, I still keep in touch. We have a young professional board of peers
Mhm.
Jack's age. And so, they're out there helping us. But their friend groups have been divided because there was the kids crying at the funeral who then picked it back up again. And then the other friends are like, "Are you kidding me?" And I'm glad you brought up the test strips because we're trying to say no to all of that because in order to test it, you would have to get every little speck of cocaine. It takes
Mhm.
3 little pieces, like on the tip of a pencil.
Mhm.
That's all it takes to kill you.
Mhm.
And with the pills, to actually test it, because if you laid it down on a strip, you would have to mash it and
Mhm.
dilute it in water
Mhm.
to test every piece. They call it the chocolate chip cookie effect, because
Yeah.
you just put the pill on it and
Mhm.
the backside has it or the side has it or whatever. So I think the kids don't understand that either. They
No.
think, oh, I'm being safe,
Mhm.
or they're carrying Narcan is important
Oh,
as
yeah.
a safety measure, but they also do that. Like, why have Narcan? So I've had kids say, oh, I just let somebody else try it first. I'm like, are you kidding me? So
Right.
they try to have all the measures in place, but going back to what you said, when alcohol plays a big factor of making decisions, then I'm like, okay, are you going to take the time to
Mhm.
test every little bit? Are
Mhm.
you going to do all this?
Yeah.
and you're invincible. They all think they're invincible and this isn't going to happen. I think Jack,
Yeah.
I hate that he is the poster child for this, but I think him being that kind of all-American smart kid
Hmm.
really shook his friend group and beyond, like, oh my God, Jack Quell just died. Like, we didn't think this could happen. We've heard about it.
Hmm.
And I hate that it has to be him to teach somebody else to make, a better decision. But that's kind of what happened,
Yeah.
and Chris passed away. And so his family, the same thing. They were a little worried about the stigma and they didn't want to talk about it. And, everybody grieves differently and that's okay. I just felt like for me to be quiet was not my
Right.
personality. I was like, I have to help. We always say to save somebody else's Jack. When we say do it for Jack, that was actually something Tom said at the funeral. I didn't know it. Like, we were there and the church was packed,
Oh, yeah.
top of our St. Columbin, just our community. And before mass started, he got up and went up to the microphone. I was like, what is he doing? And he just stood up there and said, you know what happened to Jack and we know what happened to Jack. And he just basically took the elephant out of the room. It's okay to talk about it. And
Hmm.
then he just said to all those students and friends, he said, if you come to a place in life where you have to make a decision,
Hmm.
he's like, you make the right decision. And if you can't do it for yourself, do it for Jack. And that's kind of how it started. And then someone made a
I love
shirt,
that.
that I
Yep.
know it was organically became our tagline, to do it for Jack.
Yep.
And that's really, so when we first started, we were the Jack Quell Foundation, but then Do It for Jack kind of took over. So we do businesses both, and probably Do It for Jack is more known, obviously. And that's what we're out doing,
And you're
talking.
doing it all the time. And I'm so proud of you for doing it. And when you and I first met, that was my thing too about the fentanyl poisoning. And nobody wants to hear it. Nobody wants to listen to you that this can actually happen. And then when I met you and you had your personal story about this, it was just a natural connection. I'm like, we got to help them in any way that we can. And it's so important that the kids understand that this fentanyl, which is, like I said, coming, it is from Mexico through China, or vice versa. It is not. Somebody says, well, why would three of these girls at Ohio State, two died, one didn't? Why? And it is the chocolate chip effect. When you make chocolate chip cookies, if you're better cook than you might end up with a cookie with four chocolate chips in it and another one with 20. And that's what's going on with these batches. You don't know what you're getting. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, you're exactly right. They have, we have had the pleasure of meeting a chemist father who lost his child, and listening to him is amazing because he, can talk about the science and the precursors, the chemicals to make up this
Mm-hmm.
fake illicit fentanyl
Mm-hmm.
is so easy to get. They're
Mm-hmm.
having people mix them in Home Depot buckets in the middle of nowhere. It's not some big lab, so it's very easy to take down and start again if they get caught. It's
Yeah.
a billion-dollar business, so
Oh,
they're
yeah.
not going to stop. And I think educating people just on the fact that they're not, they have no degrees mixing this stuff.
No. Oh, no.
We're actually in the middle of, we've been making our own documentary, and I had a doctor be
Good.
one of our guests because he's an anesthesiologist. We talked to the kids, and all of a sudden they're like, wait a minute, I have to have an ACL surgery and they're giving me fentanyl. We're like, no, that's okay. Educating the difference between
Mhm.
the fentanyl that's been used, for years and what we're
Mhm.
talking about. But,
Right.
even in surgery, they have somebody on hand to reverse the effects, to make sure
Mhm.
they're monitoring that every second while surgery is going on.
Isn't the
Another,
difference is the difference this is synthetic, is that right? Most of the
yes,
fentanyl that's illicit is synthetic. Yeah.
yes, and it is so potent. And then they're coming up with the next thing and the next thing, and that's kind of back to the test strips and Narcan. If they take one thing out, they're mixing something else, so it's constantly not showing up. They can
Mhm.
make something
Yeah.
that won't work with Narcan or won't work with the test strips, and so um,
Well, it's
we have to be,
constantly. Yeah.
yeah, we have to be vigilant, on
Mhm.
what the next thing is they're
Right.
making. I think another question that viewers are might have is, and this is our number one question, is why are they trying to kill their
Mhm.
customers?
Yeah.
So they're not.
Mhm.
They are trying to get you addicted, and that's the
Mhm.
problem in the United States when they say about the opioid crisis is it's
Mhm.
highly, highly addictive. So
Addictive,
if they
right.
put a trace of it in and you have it and you live, but oh, that felt really that high or whatever
Mhm.
that feels like. Okay, I'm going to do
Mhm.
it again and
Right.
again, and then then you're on to ketamine, and that's kind of what you're trying to do in Anderson. Is once you get addicted, I don't care what it is,
Mhm.
that's where the Percocets and the Adderalls in college.
Mhm.
I know the kids share prescriptions and this and
Mhm.
that. You can't. We preach that you cannot
Them.
trust your friends, anyone,
Mhm.
unless it's yours. And if your child has a prescription, I would have them keep that on the lowdown,
Mhm.
because people want it. They
Right.
use it to
Right.
stay up, like you said, and then they
Mhm.
use Xanax to fall asleep, and then it
Mhm.
becomes, a really bad habit.
It
Um,
really does, and just so unbelievable. So tell people how they can get involved with the foundation
okay.
and what
Can I
they
tell
can
you
do
one
to
more
help.
thing first? Yes. I
Yeah.
want to tell one more thing.
Oh,
If you
yeah, go
think,
for it.
I call it grief brain. So if you people listening
No,
think I'm all over the place, that's true. Um,
no.
we just actually filmed Monday, Tom and I, one of our biggest, and this is exactly what you're saying, is the conversation piece. So that's
Mhm.
another thing, like you're like, okay, what do we say? And I think if you were a parent listening, I would say, at dinner or in the car when you have a captive audience, why don't you ask them what they know? Because I tell
Mhm.
you what, instead of coming
Mhm.
at them and being like, do not do or whatever, I
Right.
think if you say, hey, have you ever heard of this?
Right.
What do you know about this? Depending
Mhm.
on the age, they know, and
Mhm.
they know
Oh,
way
yeah.
more than we know. We also, having 61-minute conversations is better than, an hour's worth of mom and dad coming at us. It could be a nice discussion
Mhm.
openly
Yeah.
about, we heard about this kid, Jack Quell.
Mhm.
We also tell our high schoolers to use Jack's name, or if you're in college,
Mhm.
you're being presented with something that you're so uncomfortable, but you don't know what to say. If you say your friend Jack died doing this, and you can say pills or whatever, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't
They're,
matter.
I think they'll back off. I really think that if you're like, no, no,
Mhm.
I can't do this because I know
Yeah.
somebody that died, it would take the pressure off for sure.
Yeah. Exactly,
Um,
because when they're in college, you can't really say, "My mom will kill me." I mean, or my mom's gonna because now they're in college, they're like, "Oh, really? Who cares?" Whatever. But back to your point
yeah,
about the Narcan, and I was very pushy. The school system would tell you that. Very
yeah,
pushy in getting Narcan in all the, nurses' offices in all 9 buildings out
absolutely.
here. And it was a bit of a struggle, I will have to tell you that, because there's always the red tape and everything, but I have found that that has been absolutely imperative to have it wherever you can. And the Hamilton County does a great job of doing the training and all that. It's so simple. And people
You
should
can't
have it
get
in their
hurt.
car.
Yes.
It exactly. And
If
it only goes
you're not
against
sure, you
the
will not.
opioids. Right.
Yes. If
Mhm.
you give somebody Narcan and they don't need it, you will not hurt them. So,
No, not one
and
bit.
you're like, okay, so I 100% agree with you. It's almost like an AED.
Mhm.
Um,
Very
Loveland
much
actually
so.
talked about figuring out a way to have signs in our local businesses that they carry it, because we have the bike
Mhm.
trail, we have the Little Miami River, we have,
Mhm.
teenagers down there all the time
Mhm.
riding bikes or
Right.
walking, or
Right.
if they would
Right.
get in trouble, if somebody would make, a mistake and do
Mhm.
something and they're in trouble, then what would they do? And we're like, if we had signs that they knew they could run to this restaurant or this business and get Narcan like an AED,
Right.
I think that would really be great for the community. But also, like you said, the schools, because
Mhm.
I don't know, some schools are 2 and 3 stories. By the time you ran down to the nurse's office and is there time for that? I feel like
Well,
every
it may
teacher's
take
desk, if you had the money, every teacher's
yeah.
desk should have it.
Well, and I could get that, but it hasn't quite gotten to that point yet. But the thing is, a lot of the high schools, they're very extended, left wing, right wing, whatever. By the time somebody would notice that a child has gone down, and then alerted the teacher, who then goes and checks on the kid. Oh, yeah, the child is down. And then, too much time goes by. And it's, if you
Yeah,
have the Narcan, use it.
yes, and I think too, like I've heard of some schools having some problems and kids get in, and they keep it so quiet. And I think that's another thing that schools need
Yeah.
to realize is be on the forefront of this. We're being proactive,
Mhm.
because I'm gonna, and you'll probably agree with me. I don't think there's one school system, I don't care where you live in Cincinnati, that doesn't have somebody doing some drugs. So like,
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
proactive. Our school
Right.
is educating, and that's where we come in. We are
Right.
educating our students. We are
Mhm.
educating our parents to be on the forefront of this and to try to stop it. Tom and we always say our best case scenario would be if we went out of business. You're great.
Right.
Everyone knows it. Nobody's doing it. Like,
Me too. Yeah.
Foundation is done, but
Yep.
I don't know. I think it's a good thing. And it's kind of like me talking about, there's a stigma. And then the school thinks, oh, well, now we're a drug school if we have you come in, to speak about this. But no, it's part of your education. It will be in the curriculums. I know certain states have adopted it. It'll be in the health books and in the health curriculum before we know it. I don't have the manpower to create a curriculum because we talked about that. And I don't have the funds to have, the focus groups and to do all their research. So right now, the only curriculum I can find online is in Oregon. A whole school system created a great curriculum and adopted it. And I know a lot of people use it, but it's up to the teachers right now to throw it in somewhere in their lessons.
And unfortunately, and I'm not equating this to suicide, but we had a lot of young people suicides out here in Anderson a while ago, and thank God, not recently. And, it just takes a while to get past the stigma, past the judgment, to say, how can we help these kids before they get to that point? And the same thing is with this education about the fentanyl. Do we want to have children who just think nothing's ever going to happen to them? And the parents go, like you said, not in our house or whatever, but that's not the case. And I think that we have to understand what help is out there, because some people will say, well, if they were doing drugs, then too bad. Whoa.
Oh, I've had that said to me. Your kid was doing drugs. Okay, I know that. But here's the deal. Kids should be able, we don't want them to, but you should be able to try marijuana, try vaping, try cocaine, try a pill, and not die. And that's the difference between 10 years ago, is you could take your friends XYZ and you weren't going to die. But now 7 out of 10 pills off the street are laced. And earlier you had said, with the people I talked to, fentanyl has been found in everything. Vaping,
marijuana.
The marijuana most of the time is trace. But if you think about it, if you have a dealer cutting cocaine on the table and then he takes out whatever to roll the marijuana or put the marijuana, it's all trace contaminations. Children are dying, little babies and toddlers. From this trace contamination. So it's highly touching it, all this, putting your fingers in your mouth. So I think if you're a parent saying, well, my kid only smokes marijuana, well, I don't know where they're getting it. And I've had parents, say that they're worried to death. People are worried about
if they're doing high potency marijuana, because that will be many podcasts that I will do, because I'm very involved in that. But if they're doing marijuana, they got a lot more problems than they actually think, but at least they can come back from it. That's what I say. Fentanyl poisoning, no.
Yeah. And it does go hand in hand with mental health. Like you said, I think the kids, we're seeing 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds. If you guys were in the groups I'm in on Facebook, you would be like sick to your stomach on a minute to minute basis. Some days I can't even read them because it's just parent after parent, these little kids, but they don't feel good about themselves. And so, who knows where they're using social media even to get a pill. And I'm going to try this.
That definitely they are. Yep.
And so it does go hand in hand with mental health, and I don't feel good. And so maybe, so we do say that a lot in our talks is, it's finding that safe person to talk to. And that sometimes, you connect with one teacher or one, friend.
Or even another parent, somebody else's parent, right?
Yeah.
Or grandparent, I talk to a lot of kids. I think it's just so important that we consider that this can happen. And the more that we can talk to the kids, the better. And I think these are conversations that are awkward at times. But I'm with you. I always say, don't sit down at the dining room table after you've just said, we're going to have a talk. Those are like right out the window. But when you're sitting waiting for your food at McDonald's at the drive-through, always opportunities.
Yeah, even like right now. So if somebody's listening to this right now, hey, I heard this podcast today.
Right.
if you have a college student, call them. What's going on in campus? Are you
Mhm.
prepared?
Right.
We heard this.
Mhm.
You think you're not going to. Do you have Narcan in your
Mhm.
room available or in your backpack?
Right.
It might not be your kid, but they could save somebody else's child. So there, you got to look at
Right.
it that way. You could be anywhere and somebody can go down. So
Yeah.
like, are we ready as a society to protect, other people's children or whatever?
And we should be. And we should be if we don't think we are. And I think that it's so important that the kids also understand the Good Samaritan law, that
Oh
no
yeah,
matter what they do to try to help by calling 911, even if they're at a party where these things are going on and they shouldn't be, and they're thinking, oh my gosh, I'll be taken down with this. You will not. You can't be. It is all part of that Good Samaritan law. And if they can help and save a life, that's exactly what they need to be doing.
absolutely.
Yeah. So,
Um, yeah, you know what else we learned this, it's interesting. Last year we kind of got into the parent arena, maybe through your talk, and then we spoke at um GE, and then we spoke at another company's sales conference. That was very eye-opening. We were in the middle of a sales conference for a national company, and somebody stood up and said, "Hey, if you've been affected by fentanyl in this room, stand up," and say there was 100 people. They had like 40 people stand up. And I was like,
wow.
whoa, because they were all over the United States. And
Sure.
so what we found when talking to adults is they don't know, in that really we were switching gears. We can go into schools all we want, and we do get good feedback that my kid came home, but most of the time kids don't go home and say, hey, we had this great assembly today.
No.
This is what I learned, or in health class. So if we can get to educating the parents, then those conversations can happen. you know,
Exactly. And
if
that's
you
been
know,
my goal.
I had no idea. I mean, that's why I'm doing this. Tom and I had no idea. Even though my friend's son died, I was like, oh, that was fentanyl. I had no idea um, how bad it is until it's too late.
Right, right. And they're saying, I think that 1 out of every 3 is being affected. And, they used to say 1 in 4 for alcoholism, but this is now, the last time thing I read, it was like 1 in 3. And I mean, if you just think about that, with the amount of kids, I do that often. I'm at a football game. My grandson plays football. And I look at the stands and I look at all those kids so excited about life. And I think 1 out of 3. Now let me just see. Is it 1 out of these 3? And you're just, it's
It,
overwhelming. It's overwhelming.
I, and I think last year the amount of people died was at 106,000. It was equated to all of Vietnam War and the Korean War. Have you heard
Yes.
that?
Yes, I
And I'm
have.
like, why, if we have these staggering numbers, I'm surprised we don't have more PSAs out there, or
Right, right.
commercials cutting it. Obviously
Yeah,
now with the elections coming up, everybody's talking about it, which great. I'm not going to,
yeah, right,
discount
right.
that. But we're you and I are trying to put billboards up. We're just
Yep,
grassroots
yep,
people trying to make a difference. But
yeah.
this is like a major United States problem that should have, more
Well,
put out there.
think about this for a second. When we had COVID and everybody was going absolutely nuts about that and whatever, and how many deaths they had from that versus how many deaths they're having from the fentanyl. And if you said that our children were being targeted and they're wiping out so many of our young people with this, wouldn't you think that would be like the number one thing? I just, it's
Yeah.
mind boggling to me, right? It
Yeah.
really
And,
is.
and I think that's, part of our foundation. It's hard, talking over and over again is very hard, but because it's something people can relate to when it's a
Right.
heartfelt conversation. But
Yep.
when you said the kids in the stands, that's the hardest thing for me right now. Life goes
Mhm.
on.
Right.
Jack's friends are getting married. I
Mhm.
social media is almost my worst enemy too, because I see what he's missing. You see this kid that had all the potential in the world
Mhm.
in life to have a career and to get married, and it's all gone. And
Right.
so
Right.
everyone else moves on, and I can see
Mhm.
it, and it's heartbreaking. And you're looking at kids in the stands, and it's kind of that same feeling like,
Mhm.
these kids have a tough life already. They have
Right.
so much
Right.
going on with
Mhm.
dealing with life.
Mhm.
And then to add that, you know what, if you try something that you should be able to try, and you will die. And that's where it gets very real.
It is very real. And I think until we can keep like you said, it's going to be a constantly evolving situation. It has been since I started this in 2018. And, it was all about the vaping of the nicotine. And then it went to the vaping of the THC. And then we went into the fentanyl poisoning. And of course, there's always been the underage drinking, which, a lot of people think is rite of passage, which it's not really. But what happens is that they're all their, I don't know what I would call it.
Inhibitions.
Yeah, inhibition.
They're
They're all completely taken out, and so then they will try things that they maybe wouldn't do had they not been drinking. So, but all of this has been going on, but it continues to change. Now we have xylazine, we have all kinds of new drugs. So the only way to stop it is to strengthen our children and make them as bulletproof as possible. And that's a job, and that's the parent's job. And it's hard. It's hard to be a parent. I know. I am one and a grandparent, and I get it. So, well, Stephanie, this has just been amazing. I just love everything that you're doing. And like I said, when I first thought about doing a podcast, you just jumped into my brain right away. And I thought, I'm going to ask Stephanie if she would do it. And I know it's our first one, and I hope it'll be the beginning of many, because there's so many topics out there.
Oh my gosh, I could write every year come back. I mean, it's just constantly evolving.
Right. And we'll have you back. Yeah, we'll have you back. So
yes,
we'll see how this goes. But people can get us on Spotify, so you can listen to it in the car when you're waiting for your child to come out of football or whatever. Also on the YouTube channel, and then it'll be archived on our website, which is www.stepupanderson.org. And tell them your
I was just gonna say, so we're actually, a lot of times donors want to know where our money's going. And so we are in the middle of redoing our website. So the new website should be live mid-October. It's going to be user-friendly and just more resources and all that good stuff. We grew so fast. It's www.doitforjack.org. So it's very easy. Just doitforjack.org. And then, like I said, can't wait for you all to see our documentary. We had all of Jack's friends that were in June for a fundraiser we had got on film, which I've listened to some. It's very hard for me to listen to. And like I said, they know way more than we do. So they're part of this, along with EMT, other families that have lost their kids. And I said EMT, doctor, just, creating our own tool to be able to use in our presentations that you've seen, just to get that to evolve to where we are now. So yes, donations are, we are all unpaid people trying to do a lot of work. I know I'm working harder than I've ever worked teaching. That's obviously a passion of yours and mine to save lives. And so that's why it's important to us. So yeah, we're having our next fundraiser. I don't know, it's on October 10th. So we're real excited about that. And then we always do Cincinnati Gives. So if you hear this and want to donate during Cincinnati Gives, that's another way to donate.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for being with me today. I am so grateful, and I feel it's been a real privilege. So, but please share the recording when it comes out with family, with friends, with other community people, because that's the only way we're going to get this out there, is to try to reach people where they're going to stop and listen for a few minutes. So
think about it. If everyone would just post it to their social media, you would have, just get that trend going of
right. Right, exactly.
So Step Up Anderson, step up and listen, people.
Step up and listen. That's exactly right. Well, Stephanie, it's been absolutely wonderful, and I thank you. And I thank you for the hard work you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here with us today. It means a lot. And you can go, like I said, to Spotify, YouTube, and our website for the recording. But please share this. The only way that we are going to be able to get this information to the people that really need to hear it is for you to share it. So on your social media, wherever you can, word of mouth, I'd appreciate it. Again, my name is Denise Mayer. I am the founder and the director of Step Up Anderson Township. We have a coalition of about 15, a lot of professionals on our. So if you go to our website, you can see who the members are, and that we're all trying very hard to save our children. Thank you.